My name is Brian Long, and I currently teach at Colfax High School. I've been teaching at Colfax now. This is the beginning of my 5th year.
Okay, so you graduated from WSU in what year?
2003.
2003. Okay. Did you grow up in a farm or in a rural area?
I grew up in a rural city. For Pomeroy, which only has 1,500 people in the whole town and 1,800 in the whole county, I grew up in a very, very small town. So everybody works within agriculture in small towns, and just being around it my entire life and being around those people is really what my background in agriculture is.
How did you decide on a career in ag education?
I had a fantastic agriculture teacher when I was going through school in Pomeroy, and I could see the difference that he was making in kids and the ability to teach FFA and agriculture. It's applied science, and that's really the applied science plus the ability to teach speaking and communication skills and the real world skills that agricultural education and FFA offer is really what enticed me more than anything.
How did you decide to attend Washington State University?
I spent a year just traveling around as a state officer in FFA, and then had to decide where I wanted to go to school, and at that point, WSU just made the most sense. It was the most familiar, it gave me the scholarships at that point, and so I ended up at WSU.
Who was your favorite professor at WSU and why?
This one's actually pretty easy for me. It was Dr. Kim Kidwell. She taught a simple plant science class. However, she was actually teaching it. It wasn't just, here's your information, I'm done. You could tell that she actually cared whether we got the information, and the paper that she required in that class, I don't know if she still requires it, was the most difficult paper I wrote in all of college, and it was only 3 or 4 pages, but she expected absolute perfection, which most of the time I could just skate by. She did not allow that, and for me that was a big deal, not having someone just be like, oh, that's good enough, and giving you an A, but she really expected exceptional, and that's a big deal to me, and she really cared.
So overall, how did your WSU education prepare you for teaching?
In terms of the actual classroom and the overwhelming quantity of things that have to be taken care of, I don't think anyone can prepare you for that. I can't imagine any situation other than actually doing it, preparing somebody to teach 33 high school kids at one time. It is a daunting, overwhelming task. It did a good job with content and a good job with preparing me for my lessons, but in terms of the classroom, I don't know how you prepare for that. I mostly was involved in 2 things. The Ag Ed Club, the Agricultural Education Club, the entire time I was in school, as well as I was eventually selected to be a student ambassador for the College of Agriculture and Human Natural Resources. And so again, I just traveled around with the group, and we tried to recruit people to higher education, specifically WSU, and I actually became the team facilitator for that whole entire organization.
So who are your current students? What classes do you teach, and what kind of background do they come from?
My current students primarily come from a combination, probably 50-50 city kids and rural kids. And then my classes I teach agricultural communications, horticulture, beginning and advanced shop, and then I teach a biology class with a heavy ag emphasis and a physical science class with a heavy ag emphasis. Most of my kids don't participate in agriculture for the sake of becoming agriculturalists or becoming farmers. They know that agriculture as a whole is one of the largest industries, the largest industry in the United States, and they know that they can learn the materials and what they want from agriculture and then take it and apply it other places in their lives. So I'd say most kids take my classes because they want to be involved in FFA. That's one of my policies. And the other reason is they kind of just like me, I think. But most of my kids that go on to college, they're going into areas of communications. Probably most notable is I had one of my first graduates, she went on to Notre Dame in communications. And a lot of them go on to engineering degrees and a lot to do with actually getting real skills.
Has enrollment in your classes since you started risen or dropped over the past several years?
Since I showed up at Colfax, enrollment has probably doubled in my classes. FFA has tripled, and so I just try to make my classes engaging, and one of my goals is that every period we laugh at least once, so that class isn't this boring, monotonous thing. It's not that it's supposed to be funny, but that it's relevant to their life, and that it is fun. I think the biggest part of agricultural education on the high school level is that it is applied knowledge. You're not just learning for the sake of learning. You learn it and then you apply it to a real world situation. So I teach a basic welding class where we learn to weld a very simple weld. It's only this long, it means nothing really. But then when you take advanced shop, you then have to develop your own project, in the end produce a product, and then it's applied to a real world situation. In my ag communications class, we will learn how to write in the inverted pyramid style, so that we can cut the ends off of their articles, and then we just put them into a newsletter, and the kids are like, wait, this doesn't fit into this little column. I'm like, that's why we do this, so we can cut the end off. And they're like, oh, and it makes sense all of a sudden.
In your opinion, what are the largest issues facing Washington agriculture today?
On the whole, Washington agriculture will probably be environmental issues. The fact that issues are being made, or I shouldn't say, policy is being made that applies and affects the west side, but it applies and affects the east side, but we have a totally different climate, a totally different way of doing things over here, and yet we still have to follow their rules. It's not fair. It's not fair to the farmers on this side that, we don't have 15 million little tiny rivers flowing everywhere, but when there's one, we have to follow all their stream policies, which I get them, I understand them, but at the same time there needs to be a sense of logic and reason that farmers have the chance to succeed and do what they do and make money, while still taking care of the environment.
How has being a Cougar helped you within agriculture education?
WSU is the land-grant university for the state of Washington. It is the center for the best agricultural science in most areas going on in the entire state, and in many cases, the entire world. So being at the center of that and being involved in that as much as possible has made me more prepared for applying those real-world instances in my classroom. Plus, it has an absolutely outstanding education program. Those two combined together should make me a pretty good ag teacher, I would think.